Now I'm going to open up my OneNote notebook. And when we first started this class at the beginning of the semester, I mentioned that OneNote was a great place to keep track of all of your notes, of all of the information that you're going to need for this whole semester. When I opened my OneNote notebook today, I saw that I haven't updated it since chapter 3. But that's okay, because I know this stuff. What about you? How long has it been since you've updated? Some of you I have seen have been updating it all along. That's great. Some of you haven't. This is your reminder. Let's get on that. Now, when I went through the Cisco Academy training, when I first started teaching, to teach networking, that is 4 semesters of very, very intense material. Got it? Mm-hmm. 4 semesters of a textbook like this for each semester. In those semesters, you're learning about routing protocols and switching protocols and networking protocols and IP addresses, and there's a lot of math, and it's just a whole lot of information that you have to remember to take the certification exam at the end. Now, if I hadn't kept notes as I went through each of those semesters, there's no way I would have been able to sit down and pass that certification exam, right? Because I would not have ever had enough time to go through all 4 of those books again and remember every detail so that I could take an exam. What I needed was a summary, a study guide, right? Well, I don't have anybody that was going to give me a study guide, so I had gone through and made notes as I went, and that's what I used to prepare. Now, in your world, you might not need notes. It might be a way of your understanding. I'm hearing a feedback. Can we turn it down or off? Thanks. Somebody's feedbacking me. We're in a loop here. So I want to create some notes about arrays. So I have my OneNote notebook open, and I'm created a new tab, and I'm going to call it arrays. Now inside that new tab, I have a page that I'm going to call notes. Now I'm going to go off of the PDF document that I gave you guys last week about arrays. In that document, chapter 7 is the arrays chapter. And when you're going through a book, a lot of times, if we look at the heading, we're going to see natural note entries, especially if we're just doing like a Roman numeral structure note, you know, just kind of like paragraph. These headings are going to be natural places for us to have a break. So let's try it. With OneNote, I'm going to start out my notes page, and I'm going to say something like array basics. Now I'm going to try to zoom in, which is kind of a pain with OneNote, so hang on with me here. It's tough.
How did you do that?
Do what?
How did you go with the shortcut to zoom on it?
Control scroll. I'm still hearing some feedback. Super distracting. I am definitely not the movie star radio host type that can handle it. Not my thing. Okay, so what about array basics? I'm going to indent this next thing underneath the array, get back to it. So let's say in our array basics, an array defines a group of repeating occurrences. If that sounds right. So we have our array, we're going to have however many unique occurrences we want, but they're going to repeat. Now, some other things about our array. The array is in contiguous memory. I have to do a spell check on that one. So there are no gaps. That means that if I have an array that's 30,000 entries long, those 30,000 entries have to fit in memory side by side. I can't have any empty spots.
No, I mean, I don't. Zoom. Yes, I know Zoom. I don't think my laptop has a microphone.
Yeah, it does.
It's like it's the thingy here. Hang on.
No, it's me, apparently.
It's you?
It should be fixed now.
Oh, shoot.
I mean, it is still predicting someone else's computer or something. But,
Something. But that's the big one, you think?
I mean, yeah.
His audio was on. That makes sense. I kept thinking this big screen was listening somehow and feeding back. Makes sense. So our audio, it's just like that if you're in an online session. Sometimes the presenter will keep saying, can you turn your audio off? Can you turn your audio off? But they have more tools available to see whose audio is on when they're doing a paid session like that than what Zoom offers. It's kind of hard to tell. Now, what are some other things about arrays overall that we learned? How do we know which entry we want to look at? No ideas?
They start at 0. The index.
Index. Index points to desired entry. So let's add can't speak right. Let's add a section about the index. Always starts at 0. That's a good one. I'm making that a separate category though, because I don't want to put that information about our index in our array basics section. But it really is an important point. What else about our index? That's a less broad category. It's kind of easier to think of things about it. We know it always starts at 0. Is it a certain data type? Do we have decimal numbers that we're using with index values, or are they always integers? So they're always an integer. I'm going to put another one. Can also be called a subscript. We'll see that that's a holdover from some older terminology, and some different programming languages might call the index a subscript. Let's see what else we might have about. Oh, our index is usually within the square brackets, right? That's where we would see that index. Anything else about it? We might think of some other things.
You feel like you don't have to predefine how many indexes there's going to be or something, like how you do like an open array instead of that here. That's the other class.
That's the other class.
Okay.
So that's an important point, that you can't do that, right? So super important. Now I'm going to back up, and under array basics, I'm going to put another entry that's at the top level. And let's make this one array initialization. Now, first of all, when we declare an array, we say the data type like int, then we use the open and close square brackets, then the array name, and that declares an array. I'm going to indent one more. Declares the array. What about if I say int square brackets array name equals 1, 2, 3? Does that declare the array? Right, it declares the array and it instantiates. Can I spell that? The array. Now I'll have to do a spell check there. And these initial values, sorry, they have a special term in here for those that I want to find. Oh yeah, this is called compile time initialization. So these are some of the things that I talk like when we're code chatting and I'm talking and I'm coding. And of course, I'm wanting you guys to participate and say, what does that do? What does this do? But when we're chatting like that, when we're coding, I try to say as many terms as I can, terminology-wise. We try to put as many terms as we can in our comments, but there's always going to be probably more that are going to be outside of our code. So that's why we have to read our chapters, sometimes even do some Googling, because these might not be exactly the same terms that we would see in another place, which is a great thing and a bad thing about being a programmer. It's a good thing because it makes sure we always get to get paid well. It's a bad thing because it makes sure we always feel like we're not sure, but that's all right. Okay, so this compile time initialization is because we have these array initializers, which are initial values. And I need to put my semicolon there. Now we had one more type of declaring or initializing an array, and that's where we said int array name equals new int of 50 or whatever, however many entries we wanted. So in this one, we declare the array, we instantiate the array in this line of code, and we dimension the array. And that's where we assign those 50 entries, dimensioning the array. How big can it be? Notice that when we instantiate in this way, we are using the new keyword. And we didn't do that when we supplied those initialization values. Good, so lots of good information. Now, as we're looking at using OneNote, it's super hard to type in code. You guys have seen that. Just have to keep bouncing back and forth and trying to change the way it does things. So you might want to just copy code directly into OneNote and make comments about it. That would be very, very acceptable. I'm going to try to use the highlighter tool here. And again, if you take these notes at home, or if you have a tablet or some sort of touch screen, then you can draw on this OneNote notes and make it look a lot better than what we can do with the mouse and keyboard. So if I try to draw on the screen using a mouse, it's going to be pretty ugly, but I can highlight. So let's see, I'm going to choose my int keyword, the data type, and I'm going to highlight that the bright yellow. And I just want to do that in all of the places that I see our data type here in our array declaration and initialization stuff. Now, especially here on this line where we have the new keyword, because it can be so hard as C# programmers to remember that we have to re-enter that data type when we dimension that array. Okay, so there's all of our data types that we found. The next thing that I'd like to highlight are the square brackets. So I'm going to select these two square brackets on my first line. And I think I'll choose like this blue. And I just want to highlight them. Just a reminder that they have to exist when we're doing these things. And then the last thing that I think I want to highlight is the array name. Now, we made it array name in all of these examples, but we could make it whatever we liked if we wanted to make it something different. I'll use this kind of orangey color. And when you're looking at C# help and C# examples, sometimes it can be actually hard to figure out where the name is, the identifier. Where's the part that I can change that I need to match up with someplace else? It can be kind of hard to define. So that's why I wanted to highlight these things that are important here in these array declarations. I got pretty much all of it, huh? It's all important. Okay, so how do we access an array? Let's see, let me zoom out a little bit. We've got array basics and our initialization. We have index stuff. That's looking good. So after our array initialization, let's create an entry for accessing an array. Array access. So if we're working with our array from above, array name followed by index is going to be the way that we're going to access that thing in general. If we want to set that entry equal to a number, we would have array name followed by the index before our equal sign. If we want to access that value, we would have it after the equal sign. So when we're trying to figure out how to put it in our code where we can set something equal to the entry in our array, we would be using this code here where we want to access that array entry. Do we need anything else there? Everybody good? You know how to do that. You want to make sure your notes would be helpful if it's been a little while since you've done anything. Yes, sir?
I feel obligated to take a moment and reassure you slightly that I think we are paying attention, but I think we're just all maybe a little tired and not very confident is all.
You're fine.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. A lot of times when we do notes like this and stuff, it's really hard for me to decide if we should, because it can be less than exciting for class, but it's so important to get your thoughts together down on a piece of paper or on an electronic piece of paper, just so you understand there's not that much, because sometimes we're running around trying to do all these examples and trying to do things. If we just write it all down, we see there's really not that much to it. We've got it underhand. So let's do our last thing here. Not our last thing, but the next thing, the array class. The array class is a system class. System.array exists in the C# system. So our array extends the system array class. Now that's not something that we learn a lot about in this class, but it basically means that we can use all of the methods and properties of the array class In our textbook, well, not our textbook, our PDF document that's completely legal, we have a list in these brown pages of different options, methods that are available to the array class. We used a lot of them in our Manatee app. We copied our array. We might have cleared it. So some of the things that we can do using the array class would be, example, we could clear an array, copy it, we could clone it, we could sort it, we could reverse the entries. So all of these different things are methods that are available to the system array class that we can use. Now in the text, they talk a lot about using arrays in classes and some of those kinds of things. We did some coding examples of those. So I think we're okay if we just get some sample code. So let's go find some. I'm going to open Visual Studio. And the project that I want to open, find it here, was chapter 4A. I didn't do a good job of naming you guys. It's different than the morning class. So I think array practice is ours. Chapter 4A, array practice. Let's check. Does this look like the right one? Or was you guys' name different? Does this one look like yours, or was you guys' name something different?
Yeah, I have that.
Hmm?
I have that.
Do you have that? Is it named that? Great, thanks. Looks like the right time, but I was starting to wonder. They're fairly similar. I just want to confuse you by it being a little bit different. So if you look at your basic string array, we created a basic string array with just a few people's names in it. And then we did a few things practicing here. So we prompted for a name, and then we updated the first name in our array. So let's copy that code. I'm going to copy this code from this string array, basic string. And if I go to my OneNote document, I'm going to add a page and make this be sample code. And then I can paste my code here. Now, if there's anything that we want to highlight, we can. So I could say, let's see, here's where I declare this array. And then right here is where we update an entry in the array. Right here. So any spots that are important things to you, you should highlight. Now right here, this is one that you might want to highlight. This is how to print out an array. So we did that in this example. You could have done it in your grades assignment that was due. You might not have, depending on how you decided to do it, because that's fine. But this is a really good example of how to print out all of the entries in an array that you might want to have. So if you find your head freaking out saying, I don't know how to do that, how do I print out all the entries in an array? Well, get some sample code and start keeping it, because that's what you're going to need to do those kinds of things.
Oh, on that, right down there at the print array,
Uh-huh.
I don't have this code, so I'm saying yours, but why would it be string, the brackets, and then IMP, not names?
Because we called this print array as a method. And so when we called it in our main, we passed that array. So that is how we would declare that array as a parameter. So highlight that if that's something that you need. Now in that project, there should be some other things that are code samples. The average diff, zoom in or zoom out here a little bit. In the average diff, we prompted a user for input for a number. We took the number that they entered in and put it in an array, and then we went through that array to total up all of the numbers they gave us, eliminating, well, we didn't eliminate any in this one, but when we output things, we output the average and how far each number was from the average, so a difference. So it's a really good one for us. So if you want to highlight any of it and copy it into your notes, let's see, I'll get the whole thing, copy, go back to OneNote and paste it. And now in OneNote, some of the things that I might want to highlight, again, here's where my array was declared. Using the output parameter is where the array got updated. And then we had our for loop where we processed the array. So this one's a little bit different because we updated our array in our out parameter. The notes, it's important for you to keep things that are meaningful to you so that they mean something to you when you go back to them. Right? I'm going to click back to my notes. I want to add one more thing down at the bottom. I'm going to back tab, and I'm going to say that we can have a two-dimensional array. With a two-dimensional array, C# is a row dominant language. So that means the row index would come first. So if I created a matrix, a two-dimensional array, I would have rows and columns. My index entries would be row, comma, column. So we can put that in our notes, index entry. Row, comma, column. So if I look at my matrix, my index value of this cell would be 0, 0. This cell, 0, 1. This cell, 0, 2. Then 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 2. 2, 0, 2, 1, 2, 2. Now, the reason that we haven't spent a lot of time and done assignments using matrices is because it's literally unnecessarily complicated, because we can just create an array of objects of our classes. So we don't usually need to get into multi-dimensional arrays. We'll just create classes and then use them in an array to keep from having the super complicated array. So yeah, we could have two-dimensional, three-dimensional, whatever we want. But it always starts with the row. Now the last thing that we could have is a jagged array. And a jagged array is a 2 or 3 or whatever dimensional. but differing number of columns per row. So with a jagged array, I might only have one entry in this column. I might have 3 in this one and 2 in this one. So again, it can be very, very messy and really hard to program. And this is one reason that they came up with object-oriented programming, to get away from having such complex data structures here as this. All right, let's save everything. Now we really need some notes about our exception processing. So let's add a tab. Exception handling. And I'm going to make this first page my notes for exception handling. Now, our exception handling chapter was in our C# Pro book. And as you start going through this book trying to make notes from the chapter, it's a lot harder than it was from that older book. This is part of the reason that we have a hard time gathering data from this textbook, because it's not super well organized. It's like the author didn't make an outline when they started writing it, so they don't have a really good way for us to figure out what they want. So we're going to try, but it doesn't lend itself as well. It needs a little bit more time to make notes than what our arrays chapter did. So let's start out with types of errors. And I don't know whether to call those errors or bugs or what, because that's what we're referring to are all of those things. So let's make that a little bit bigger. And the first type that they talk about are bugs. Now, bugs are programmer problems. They should be fixed. They are mistakes that a programmer made. That's what a bug is. Now, the first bug was found by Grace Hopper.
I think it's a literal bug.
Yeah, and I think it was a roach.
I heard it was a moth.
I've heard many. Roach, moth. I think it was probably a moth, because moth would cause more trouble. So what it was actually that Grace Hopper was a Navy seaman. Is that the right word?
She was a rear admiral.
A rear admiral. And she really is credited with inventing the COBOL programming language. And so she was working with lots of people, and something quit, and the system failed, and they found that there was a bug in the circuitry. So I like it because it's the first incident of a hardware problem being attributed to the programmers, right? Because this was a hardware problem. We don't fix those. That bug was right in the circuitry. But it got attributed to the software, and forevermore then we call that a software bug, which is great. Anything to add, Donovan? Because I'm not as up on it as you are.
That's the highlight.
Is that the highlights?
I mean, if you want me to just ramble on about Grace Hopper for a while, I could.
Have you done reports and stuff?
No, I just find her to be an incredibly fascinating person.
Yes, very much. So that's a bug. Bug is bad. Bug is our fault. We get to fix it. User errors. And this is an interesting way that it's categorized in our book. These are caused by the user. Now, whenever we're talking about user errors, they need to be corrected, but there are a couple of different ways we might have to go about correcting them. First is we might need user training, right? So if we train our users how to use the system appropriately, hopefully they won't keep typing in the wrong data, causing it to break. But is there another thing that we might want to do if that's happening a lot? Can't think of a thing, huh? I'm just waiting for somebody to tell me what else we might want to do if we keep having the same user error over and over. But I can wait. Do what? Can you guys hear her?
Prompt for another input or the correct input if they input a letter.
Oh, that's a good one. Is it somewhat our fault also? Should we take some responsibility in this and try to fix the program? Yes, sir.
Validation.
Yeah, yeah. So we might need to do some input validation. Very good. Thank you.
That is definitely on us. Because if you program it right, then you can make the computer a lot more patient about it than the user.
Right.
Rather than the other way, requiring it to be the other way around.
Our poor user shouldn't be being able to break it that easy. For sure. Okay, good job. Now, the last one is exceptions. And I'm sure we could come up with a lot of different errors. This is just how they have it separated. Now, an exception is something that we can call a runtime anomaly. So if I have input that must be numeric and a user types non-numeric data, that's not an anomaly. That's something I should expect, right? They're going to do that. So I'm going to try to grab it and handle it. Now, if, however, we have to access the database to display information for this output, and I lose the database connection, that's not a normal situation. That is an anomaly, right? Something out of the ordinary has happened. I've lost connection to the database. That's the kind of exception we're talking about grabbing with these exception handling. So it's some sort of exceptional circumstance. And I'm going to put a couple in here. Connecting to a database, no network, or our network connection has failed. Or we could have something like someone deleted the file that we have been reading. So lots of these kinds of things, these are exceptions that causes our program to behave erratically, but we can't code for every possible situation or we'll never get a program done, right? If we have to write code to handle the failed network connection and try to reestablish a network connection to continue on, then we're going to have to rewrite all of the TCP/IP protocol, right? Because we want the network to reestablish that network connection, not us. But we're going to have to make sure that we display some sort of message in our program that says we can't continue right now because of this anomaly or this failure. So whenever we're looking at .NET exception handling, we're talking about handling all of these kinds of bugs, but we want to be really concerned with these unexpected type things. So I'm going to make a new entry in my notes, .NET exception handling. So we saw, first of all, with .NET, we can throw an exception. Now, we can do it, right? We can throw one. So if in our program we've found that you gave me a new product to add to the database, but the invoice code doesn't exist, so I can't add it to the database, I could throw an exception and say, invalid invoice code, I cannot add this product to the database, right? Because it's an unexpected situation, but I've got to do something about it. In our case of the little car app, we threw an exception if the car was going too fast, was going to blow the motor, right? We can throw an exception. The system can throw an exception. So if we're running a program that uses an array, in our array, we try to access an entry in our array that is outside of the bounds of the array, who is throwing that exception, us or the system? If we knew it was outside the bounds, we wouldn't do it, right? So it must be the system. The system can throw an exception. So if the file's not found, database isn't accessible, any of those things, the system is going to throw the exception. So the exception gets thrown, an exception object gets created. Now, this exception object has all sorts of things in it, right? The date, time, type of exception, messages, all of that kind of stuff. It has the memory contents of our system. The last few processes that have been running, all of these kinds of things. And we saw in that little example that we could add to this information or we could just look at it and see what we have. Okay, so besides throwing an exception then, we can also catch an exception. When we catch an exception, we're saying we want to process the exception in our program, not the system. So that means our program can continue running. We can take care of that exception and continue on. We can catch one type of exception or many. Now, I'm not going to put any example code. We have some really good example code for exception processing. The one that you guys got at the end of your TFS treasure hunt, that has some good code. Also, what's in our book. One last thing, though, let's put in our exception handling notes is the finally clause. Finally. The finally runs if there is an error, an exception. It runs if there is not an exception. It just basically runs either way. So it always runs. Now, there's a lot of great information in Chapter 7, and I'm summarizing really a lot there. But with our exception handling, it will mean more as we use it. So let's save everything. Now I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to grab some code to put in with your notes and add some additional information so that you can highlight some things, and then we'll work on our lab today, which is to update our CD audio app that we made a while back. got some stuff.
So I just wanted to say, I realized I forgot to, I had the hypergrade done. I was looking at my grades just before class. That I forgot to submit the exam, the Canvas submission.
That's no problem. Just
Okay.
submit it.
Okay, well, the thing's gone. The submission feed is gone. That's why I wanted to talk to you. I gotta,
Oh,
like,
the
email
Unit
you.
2 one?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's gone. I can, like, I didn't see it open. And just, yeah. Yeah, I just realized, I was like, oh crap, because I was looking, I was like, oh, I wonder what I got on that. And you have it great.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, I wonder what I got on that. So
Closed it. I've changed Canvas where it doesn't show that on the
okay,
screen. We can see it. I still have to do that. You should be able to see it.
thank you.
Sure, no problem. Okay, guys, I think that I have the CD app loaded to your announcements that I want you to grab. And it may be different than what we had in class. So if you would, go ahead and download this zip file so that we can all start at the same place. And I'm going to do the same thing myself, because we have some different versions and different things. So we'll all start with this one. Now I've got it downloaded. I'm going to walk through extracting it. I know you guys do it all the time, but just in case. Now I've got it downloaded, so I'm going to extract it to a place. So let me extract it to a different place where I want to go. I don't want it in my downloads. Try that again. I'm going to extract it to someplace else. Okay, let's get that thing open. Wherever you want to put it, when you extract it, put it there. You shouldn't need it forever, but we can check it into TFS, since we never had this one in TFS before. Now, after you get it extracted, let's make sure we're all on the same one. Silly thing wouldn't stop. Okay, Visual Studio griped at me a bunch. It said, you've got this. I'm trying to open it from the network, and so it complained about it twice because there's 2 projects inside this.
It usually complains at me about you should only open programs from trusted sources. So are you sure you want to do that?
Yep, you're never sure you're
It's like,
silly.
yes, I'm sure it's fine.
Now, we should have 2 projects inside there. So there should be the 3 audio CD and 4 audio CD. And we'll take a look at them to kind of refresh our memory. And I think it's different. I think in our class we did the 2 projects, bless you, in separate solutions. So that's why I'm giving you the one from the other class. So we'll try it here. Now let's look at the first one, our number 3. Our audio CD class, if you double click on it to open it, if you remember, it's been a few weeks since we worked with this one, but our audio CD is an instance of a CD that we have in inventory at our store, a CD or an album or whatever that we have in inventory. So we had given it an ID, a name. We're keeping track of how many tracks it had, how much it cost, and how many we had in the store. So those are our audio CD class CS files. We had the same exact thing in both projects. It's duplicated. Now let's look at the user EX in this first project. This was our user experience. And in our user experience, we set this thing up really nice where we had a loop, and if users wanted to enter information about an album, We prompted them for all that stuff. We created an instance of our audio CD, and then we printed out the information and asked them if they wanted another one. So very nice. Now, in the For Audio project, our tester is what's different. We decided that it's great to spend all of our time prompting users for data, but if we need to really test our class, sometimes we don't want to spend all that time prompting forever and ever. So we decided we would create this tester where we just loaded hard-coded values in, created a CD named CD2, and then wrote it out, right? So if you found the tester, this is the one we want to work on first. What I'd like to do here is instead of just having one CD that we're going to print out the information about, I would like an array of CDs so that we could keep track of some information for the actual inventory. So I want to start out up here at the top of my main to declare my array. And it's going to be an array of audio CDs. So for my data type, I'm going to put audio CD. And that's all I need to do that's different to declare that I can keep track of all instances of my audio CD class in this array. We'll call it all the CDs. Now we could stop there and have that array declared. And then let's instantiate it. All the CDs equals a new audio CD array. Let's just put like 5 in there. So that will dimension or allocate or instantiate the array. Now we've got some instances here of our CDs being created. Let's go down a little bit. And after our audio CD2 gets created, let's put that into our array. So all the CDs, item 0 is going to be equal to CD2. So that's easy enough. I want to create some more CDs though. Let's copy CD2. So that's 2 lines of code I want to copy. And let's create CD3.
Does the new audio CD, doesn't that have 6 inputs or 6 values?
Yeah. Are we missing one?
Well, it's just we put the,
Up here,
yeah, 5.
it would have 6. Well, actually, you're right, it would have 5, but what are we worried about? It would have
That's just
5.
how many CDs there are,
Yeah.
not the number of properties. That
Thank
array
you.
doesn't hold the
Thank you,
properties.
Dominic. I wasn't sure what when getting it. Okay, so for CD number 3, let's make it one of the Beatles CDs, or you can make it whatever you like, but a different,
Whatever number we want.
yeah, a different album, some different stuff that has 7 tracks, and I made it CD3. Now I want another one, so I'm going to make this CD4. CD4, I don't know. I'll make it the Rolling Stones. I don't know any of their albums. Something about satisfaction, right? Now I have a lot of hard coding here. I'm going to make entry number 1 equal to CD3 and entry number index value 2 equal to CD4. And then I'm going to make one more, let's see, index entry 3. I'm going to actually make it dynamically. So I'm going to say that it is a new audio CD, and we'll say that it is ID number 5. Let's see, this is the quantity. We'll have 5 of those, and the cost. I'm sure American Idiot is worth a fortune, right? There we go, 90. So whenever we created all of these CD instances up here, these are named. They are named instances. They have an identifier. I don't think that's how you spell identifier. I should make an I there. This one down here is anonymous. It doesn't actually have its own name. The only way I could get back to it again would be if I referred to index entry 3 of all the CDs array, because that's the only place that that instance is inside that array. The other instances are outside with a name and inside the array. So let's print them. What we have here. I'm going to do a write line first. And in my write line, I'll say, here's our for each loop to print CDs. And in my for each, the collection is going to be all the CDs. I can leave my data type as var, because var means like anything. But each of those items, I'll call item. And then inside my for each loop, I can just write out that item. Remember, that's going to use the toString method of all of our audio CDs. So it'll print them out all nicely the way we have that toString method set up. I'm going to make sure that there's a read or a read key after that. There is, because I want to see all that output. So as we go, we're going to create this Britney CD and print it out. We're going to create this Beatles CD and print it out, the Rolling Stones and print it out. We're going to add all 3 of those to our list, then create this Green Day CD right in the list, and then print out everything that we have in our list. So let's try it. Oops, I don't want to be running that project. I want my number 4 to be my startup project. And I'll try it. Now, if I scroll up to the very beginning of my output, the first one is that weird default one. We're going to have to add it to our list. We didn't put it in our array. But here's Britney, the Beatles, the Stones. Now, that's it, because those are all the ones we created by hand. Now our for each loop is running. We see Britney, the Beatles, the Stones. There's our Green Day one that didn't come out in the first time because we didn't enter it by hand. So now all of our CDs are showing up. Let's add that default one. Up here, our My CD, the very first one we created, is empty. It uses our default. So let's put it in our all the CDs list at position 4. Now if we print them out, we'll see that that CD with ID 1 comes out last, because that's the order we put them in our array. And sure enough, there's our number 1, our default CD that came out last. We would have to rearrange everything to put it first. Is it working? Some people's working. Good, 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 good. All right, so here's what we're going to do. In your user experience class, we want to, bless you, add an array so that we can keep track of all of the CDs that they type in here as users. After they type things in, after our while loop, we'll want to print that out, all of those entries in the CD. So let's think about it. At the top, before our do while loop, we're going to need to set up our array and maybe a counter to keep track of where we are in our array. Within the loop, we're going to need to add to the array, probably right here after we create that instance of that CD, we want to add that first CD into our array. Then after the loop, we want to add a new for each to print out each entry in our array. So how are we going to do this? Let's see, we're going to split up here. We've got 3, 3, and 3 over here, so those are perfect groups. You guys stay with your table if your table group is capable of it. What I'd like for you to do is show me when you get this working so I can ask you to add a little bit more if there's still time. If there's not, we'll figure out what to do then. So let's get started. Now, this side, we don't have anyone back there, so we're okay. So let's do, how can we switch? You guys, you 3 are good back in the back. You guys, I'm not exactly sure how to switch. I guess we could just, well, we don't want 4 in our row. Dominic, would you come up here and would you mind, since you've got your laptop? Are you more portable? Can you move?
Yeah, just.
Are you sure?
I'm working on one of the other assignments as well.
Okay.
So I'm.
No problem, but if you can, if you're more movable, that'll be you 3.
I think that okay, we want to talk
If it's in hypergrade, it's okay. Don't you worry. Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem. You couldn't have gotten it in the hypergrade if not
Yeah,
at the same time.
I was like looking for some crap. Like a little bit of assignment, I would have been too worried.
You're fine, because Dominic's got his laptop. He's just going to rearrange his computer. No, that's one good thing about hypergrade. I know it's in there, Dave. He's got a tail today. Are you okay with someone with a tail? Okay,
I always
good.
have the tail.
No,
I just don't notice.
I don't see it, Elizabeth. That's true. I don't notice. I'm not going to say anything else.
I don't think this through all the way. I'm supposed to unplug my cord for me. Oh. That's what we're trying to do. Okay. So where are we at currently?
Okay, she said set up the array, a counter, and a for each.
She said, "Are you here? You wouldn't know this." Oh my God.
I do owe apologies. I've only been halfway paying attention because I'm trying to get caught up. So we have this one. This is our tester, just to make sure everything is working correctly. I assume everything is working correctly, right? Okay, so we don't need to worry about the audio CD class at all. We're just trying to do the input part, it sounds like. Okay. So like, what does she want us to actually end up doing?
She wants us to set up an array Okay.
It doesn't say anything about the user putting in his input yet, though.
No, it does not.
Is there a bit where we do that? I guess there's this part.
Are you sure? I know, that's.
These are all hard coded, so no, we're not asking for input to utilize.
Well, no, I'm thinking this must be where there's supposed to be input, but it's not there yet. This is the part we're supposed to put in, I think.
Oh, we're supposed to put in the user input.
Maybe.
This, no,
Didn't she say there was supposed to be a third person up here? Does one of us count as two people?
Don't have to worry about it.
I guess so.
Please don't let it be me.
Because these are different.
Can I see the mouse for a second?
So what do you mean by the word?
Well, if you go to your how are you gonna-
Okay, these are just input methods. Nifty.
Okay, so it starts at 0.
So first thing we want to do is declare an array,
Are you guys?
which we can just do right under here as far as I'm concerned. So what's the
So I see. Go back to your text.
oh god. There we go.
Do your test. Where did you see
Item the array type. We need the little brackets. What do we want to call this array? It doesn't matter a whole lot.
We're missing this stuff from audio 4.
We can be a little more descriptive. Inventory, maybe? That seems to be kind of the flavor we're going for. Okay.
We're gonna do.
We might put a space in there, though. It seems to like it better when you do that.
How many are we gonna do?
How many are we going to do? Did you say anything to that effect?
So let's do 3.
Let's make it a bigger number, because we can always just leave some of them blank. That's totally fine. But if we don't have enough space, then she might yell at us.
Okay, 5.
I'm thinking 10. I sincerely doubt she's going to go as high as 10 CDs, given that she's presumably going to be putting all of these in manually. So
I want to say we've already done
Okay, got that. Set it up.
We've done it.
Tell me account, I would add.
So that's in the
I
test.
think we can actually
So look at that
necessarily.
See if you
I think we can
figure
just
out how to
salvage
add
this do while
that
loop.
CD array.
Because like she's wanting at the end a for each loop to print everything out. That's kind of happening here. We just need to get rid of this bit where it says write whatever CD is put in and just add it to the array is the next bit.
Right.
So let's
So
get rid of
I would
that.
make it a certain size.
Now actually we need to restructure this a little bit. Let's turn this do while into a for each.
This will actually run.
Or not for each, just a
To
for
make
loop,
it
I'm sorry.
explode.
Inch, whatever, I equals 0.
To add the first CD. That's created after that.
Call it.
So
Inventory dot length. Then if we decide we need a longer inventory,
Oh, and then
just keep in mind CD on this one.
okay,
Gotcha.
we can get rid of that altogether because we don't need that anymore. It's actively bad even, and we don't need that anymore either. Okay, so now we just need to tell this inventory I equals CD.
equals new.
No, it just needs to be that. Because this is where we declare that as being an audio CD object. And now we just want to plug it into our inventory. Actually, I wonder if we can skip a step and just cut that. put it right there, and we don't even need this. Let's see. Well, it doesn't like having two equal signs there, but beyond that, it should be fine. I think. Yeah, let's try that and see if it works.
So we're adding.
You'll want to save it first, please.
If you start, it'll save automatically.
Will it?
Yep.
Oh. Okay. I don't know where these came from, but okay.
That was already on there from what she had done.
Instructions. This is the tester still running, isn't it? Okay, yeah, we need to
That's,
We-
yeah.
we need to tell it that this is our
Change the,
main now.
yeah.
Can you hit enter, please?
Yep.
Thank you. I don't remember how to do this.
Start it. Start it.
I don't find myself doing this very often.
Go up there and hit the right. Hit this up here on the right. And then should start up. Here, start.
Okay.
There. Okay, now you can hit.
What is wrong with you? And we should be able to just enter an ID, I guess.
No, I mean, I'm pretty well started. Like, I know what she wants to do.
I think for the ID it wants a number. Or no, it does want a string. It doesn't, so it doesn't matter for the ID.
You're not gonna put that, okay.
That's fine. Now the name is also a string, so again, whatever. This time we want an integer. A cost is a decimal. Quantity is an integer. And we're back at the start again. How's it doing? Where is it doing that? Is there another loop in here?
Did we end the loop?
I mean, oh. Well, we haven't ended the loop because it'll go through it 10 times. Oh.
It makes sense.
These are inputs.
So it's not fault that
Derp. Derp.
Dude, but it makes sense when you explain it.
So maybe the for loop isn't ideal for this.
Thank you.
Because now it basically wants us to do all of them.
Top 10.
Oops. That's not good. Let's not do that.
Okay.
If you hit hold Control C down for a second or two, it'll exit out accordingly.
Okay.
Good for when you're stuck in a loop like that with a million inputs, or an infinite loop and it's just scrolling and not letting you do anything.
Okay.
You do need to know
That is how
where
you
you
get
are
out
in your
here.
array
So for loop,
to
not
add
good.
CDs to it, right?
But like we have to add to one class.
let's just have it say while true, and then down here after we've gotten the inputs for a CD,
So
we
since
can
it's in that
put a
loop,
little
you're
if
just gonna
statement
add
that
that
says-
counter to
we can
know
just ask for a little input,
where you are
and
in
if the
your list
input
of CDs
says to quit,
to add this CD
it'll
to the
break.
list.
So that means we need
That makes sense?
a new thing right here.
Sorta?
So go ahead and put, no, we're gonna declare a variable here. Go ahead and do int I equals 0. Okay, then we'll just go down here and right under that, we'll tell it to I++. And that's the counter that you wanted. Okay, so that means every time we plug a new thing in here, it'll put a new spot in. And that means with this, we can actually just go whatever. It can be as big or as little as we want.
But isn't it gonna keep prompting up to that number?
Yes. That means we need to tell it to. So the way I usually do this is I'll make a little command variable,
Okay.
and then I'll tell it while command does not equal exit
Yeah.
or whatever. So let's declare a string variable. And we can just call it whatever, command, exit, anything works really.
Do you have everything that you need?
Tell it equals blah, whatever. Just literally anything other than whatever our exit command is going to be. Okay. While exit does not equal, so that's the exclamation point that equals, does not equal whatever our exit command is going to be. So like quit, I guess, in the quote sign.
Oh.
Then at the bottom here, we can put in a prompt that says type in quit to exit, or press enter and put in another CD. And that way we can just happily put in CDs until we decide we're tired of putting in CDs.
That only matters if you want to not
Okay, got the right line.
Sure. Sure, that works. And then we need a read line that reads into our exit command. Just console.read doesn't work because that just reads in, that only reads in integers apparently or something like that. I just don't use it. It just causes problems. You know, even if you're trying to read in integers, just having it use a read line and then converting it to an integer is way more reliable. But I digress. So now we can save it and test it, because now we can tell it that we would like to quit, please. We do still have to put in at least one CD though.
Okay.
We don't care. Okay. No, it did. Because see, it didn't go back up to the top of the loop again. Now it's just waiting for you to quit the program. We haven't told it to actually print
study
it.
guide somewhere. I don't know why she didn't print that for you guys. And it specifically says in step that he sent, but that's not supposed to be your written test for the contest. And I think she was looking at the contest and saying, oh, this one has a written test. They're gonna. It is required for every contest to give it to you. But I mean, they could always change things. But it's no big deal. So it's really common sense. Like it has questions like a one-sheet document that describes your strengths is usually, you know, a resume, that kind of stuff.
Okay,
Yeah.
so now we can go back to our user program.
Yes.
Now we can make it
Is she okay?
after this while here.
But they're still doing more tests.
See what's going on.
Or
She thinks she has
audio CD,
that's what she said.
See, that's very
whatever. I will do this then.
So I can like stop for a moment and sit there and like.
So we have
It's a
audio
small thing.
CD, I,
You what?
and we need our array inventory.
Not good. You're
I've
adjusting.
never.
Oh, we can't name it, right? We're already using I up here.
All the men decided that they weren't any big deal. We were like, wait, it really was.
Like, generally speaking, it can be literally whatever, but there's certain commands you like because it uses that for other stuff.
Yesterday I was
Like
like,
when you use other variables, you're already
no matter
using.
what, no matter how much payments, they just would not go away.
That-
I was literally curled up in all my kids' pad and I was with my boyfriends.
Hey guys, are you done? I asked you to show it to me when you got done because I was going to have you do something else. So
We are almost
if you
there.
need to go, go, you know, but you're going to miss out on the rest of your lab. So it's up to you.
Now we can test
Do what?
again. It's 12.
No, you start working on the
Oh, whatever. Super mature on email. let's see. Yeah, it will in fact. Let's try another one.
Just to leave that word.
Not perfect.
No, it's quick. What's the quick?
Well, yeah, but it's got this big empty space. Okay, I did print them out. I see what happened. We've got 1,000 entries. And see, for these two, well, because we wanted it to be arbitrarily big so that you're never realistically going to have. But it's telling it to print out all of them. And so it doesn't have values in there, but it's got to print out something, is what's happened there. Not, yeah, of course.
So now what I want you to do is
It seems like the immediate solution is to just make this smaller, but it's still going to have that gap, but I'm not 100% sure how to make it.
How to make it stop after a certain amount of.
Well, because see, like, what we would do is we put a little if statement that says, if there's nothing here, then break it.
Yeah.
But we're not 100% sure what nothing here looks like.
So
I guess what we could do is put another for loop here and give each one a default value. Now, give it some definite default value that we know the user is never realistically going to put in. And then we can have it check for that default value.
Okay.
Okay.
Or
That's why.
No reason to change that. 0.
oh, from you changing it, okay, good. Okay.
Yeah, I guess.
Right, so then what I want next is, and since you guys put in the awesome count, now I want you to let it go past your base.
That's so there. Is there a G?
Yes. Go back to
Okay, there is a constructor.
Yeah, you got it.
But it's just a basic. It's got all of it. So all we really need to do is make a new constructor that takes 0 parameters. This is a great thing to know how to do, is make multiple constructors. You know, if nothing else, it's always a good idea to have a basic constructor that just in case there are no parameters.
Yeah, what you want to do, you don't actually want to throw the exception.
And for the rest of it, we just
So I
really
want
don't
to
care.
try.
Because all we're using it right now to do is just check to see if it's
Oh, you got it way up here. Okay.
Ideally, we put things in there.
Yeah, so what happens though when you do that throw inside there? Does it continue working or does it eventually operate?
It's one.
It would, so let's leave that out.
What's that property
And
called?
let's
ID.
make it to where, can you make it where they can continue? Or
Actual C.
what do we want?
This, I guess,
Wait, run it for me, center.
Else. Right. Why doesn't it like that?
It's different.
It is private, is why.
Right?
Yeah, they can overflow your array.
Hush. What? Oh my God.
So it's giving them the message, we just couldn't see it because it didn't stop.
Oh,
So that's all right.
that's why. Sure.
So you put a read after.
Now we can try it.
If you wanted to inside your
Oh my.
section logic, so that we can see, make it inside your cache.
Variables.
Index.
30. Oh, we never told it to
Yeah,
declare
there's
the
There's nothing in the forward.
dirt.
Now you can see it.
Inventory. I
So in
Nope.
message,
Okay, so this is like.
I promise I'm a smart person.
That's why you get all the result from that section.
Yep, that should do fine. Take 2. Still that's built there.
Retention overflow.
Is it just because we're using I elsewhere?
Maybe. Yeah.
See if it'll accept and. Okay. All right. Take 2. Whatever.
And then exception.
So it doesn't do all that extra stuff. So you can control what you print out from your section object, you know, however you want. That was good. It's great. So you caught it and continued on, so instead of crashing, you can tell them something. Nice.
How would you keep?
Aha! And it puts it out exactly once.
Now,
It's still got a couple of lines underneath it for some reason, but that's fine. That is an acceptable number of extra lines. And now we can have her tell us about the extra things. Quite likely. Something we might work on while we're waiting on her is that extra constructor we need. Ideally, it does need to have default values for these other ones if we're going to go to the trouble. So all we need to do is copy and paste that over here and just replace these with default values, just like we've done on ID here. So like this is our constructor that takes no parameters whatsoever. So all we're doing is we're just telling it, since they didn't tell us what to put in here, just put this in here instead. Right, with the ID here, we're just going to do literally the same thing on there. It doesn't matter, just so long as it's got something in there that if it does end up on the string, can tell us, oh, they forgot to put something here, and that's why it's got this weird garbage on there.
Okay, so you're saying eliminate these?
Not these, like here where it says name.
Yeah.
Delete just this part that is just highlighted.
You might want to have to try.
And just put a random string in there. It literally doesn't matter what it is. So it might be, that's supposed to be the name of the album, right?
Yeah.
It might be album name.
Yes. Perfect. Finding stuff, how are you guys doing?
No, not as a variable, as a string in the quotes.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
We're just giving it a value of some kind. There you go.
Okay.
That's okay. That's easy to fix. And we're going to do the same thing for the other ones. Some of them will want integers and one of them will want a decimal, but it's the exact same concept.
So I can just do anything here, like
It'll want a number, not a string this time. But yeah, like you can just put in 12, for instance.
Whatever that's
in class, I can put it in 10.
Yep, just 10.0, I guess, or like even just 10 would be fine. Yeah. And then quantity, probably just 1. Yep. So that way, it does have values there at least, on the off chance that our default variable, our default objects do get called.
I want to decide where you so what do we want to do? What do we want to try? Okay. That's what I was.
She'll come over, tell us our extra assignment that I assume we're doing over the weekend.
Or
Right.
even this out for each.
I guess she'll tell us when she gets over here.
But I don't think we have time. Yes, sir. Okay. You know, your item
Okay.
is already made by your for each. Remember your for each, it's a read only. It's giving you that audio CD item. It's not going to let you create a new one. So a for each loop is not something that you can update the collection in. Yes, yeah. It's only a read. So it won't let you put new ones in there. What you guys got?
So she went to the bathroom, so I will speak for us collectively. That's the class, we don't need that. Well, we did add a thing to the class that ended up being useful. We added a default constructor, you know, because it was useful to be able to call that without having any parameters.
Nice.
So we added our array in here. We just set it to 10 and then made a quick loop to give each of those areas a default value.
Okay.
Importance in a minute. Okay, this is the loop, which we edited a little bit to be a little easier to use. Now, gets the inputs as it used to, adds it in,
Uh-huh.
and then we can exit or not on here. Because we've got a big array that may or may not actually have values in all of them, if it's our default value, then it breaks, otherwise it prints it out. And we understand that there is now an extra bit that we need to do.
Okay, that's nice. What I was asking everybody to add in is a try-catch to catch a problem if somebody exceeds the size of your received array. So I don't know if you have time. Be sure and save first.
Yeah, I don't think we have time for that now.
Because I
What
don't
we'll-
think you do, but think about how you would put that in.
Especially as I wasn't paying quite as much attention to the try-catch thing as I ought to have been. So
That's why we always do
yeah.
it last.
I'll look at it this weekend.
It's not that. It's really easy.
Instead of looking at that
Some
last
of
weekend,
stuff.
I was looking at file handling.
Oh,
As I
how
said I
did
would.
you do? Did you get a lot figured
Yeah,
out?
it's I've got the basics down at least.
Great.
So, yeah. So we talked about how we were going to have this at 10 or 100 or 1,000 or whatever, so that they're not conceivably going to get up to the maximum. What she wants us to do is, on the off chance that they do anyways, put in a try-catch